The first one is Quirinius. Quirinius, in the book of Luke, it talks about a census that Quirinius had done. Okay? And there's a lot of debate about that. Oh, that never happened. They never did that. Lysanias, okay? Another situation where the timing's off, so clearly Luke is wrong, or clearly the Gospels are incorrect. The existence of Nazareth. Oh, this place never existed, so Bible, it's wrong. However, as we start to look at these archaeological, these historical facts, we'll see that a lot of times people just jump to conclusions because they don't do those things that we said we're going to try to do in this presentation. Okay? So let's dive in. I'm going to first talk about Quirinius and the census. So the main thing here is that people often said, and I actually came to, man, it's amazing how long ago that was. I came to CF back when it was CFCC. And my teacher, I took comparative religions, and my teacher, literally like first day, it might have been second or third, I think it was the first day though, for the wow factor, talked about the census, and right off the bat was like, that never happened. I mean, the Bible talks about the census, they didn't do those, and I was like, really? Okay. I think he used the King James, and he said tax, and that doesn't matter either. But the thing is, a lot of people go here, and they say it never actually happened. Well, there is clear evidence from archaeology, since those arguments have been made, that Romans did. Not only did they hold the census, and not only was it done during this time frame, and I'll give you the place you can go here. His name is John McCrae. It's a book called Archaeology of the New Testament, specifically on page 155. This is the quote. Seeing that the time has come for the house-to-house census, it is necessary to compel all those who for any cause whatsoever are residing out of their provinces to return to their own homes, that they may both carry out the regular order of the census and also attend diligently to the cultivation of their allotments. Now, is this scripture that I'm quoting? Is this where it's talking about the census with Mary and Joseph? No. This comes from Gaius Vibius Maximus, okay? It's another census that was taken, where they indeed not only took a census, but required people to come back to their place of origin to let that census be carried out, which is what the Bible talks about. So that's one major area where people talk about it. Again, I was sitting in a class, and this was something that came up. I was like, what? This didn't really happen. See, the Bible is just full of these inaccuracies. The problem is, up until then, at that time, I don't think the archaeological finding had occurred. But now that we know that they did this is kind of a, well, maybe we should back off of that. And so what we have to do is remain objective and examine the evidence. Just because we don't have evidence for something yet does not mean it didn't happen. So also there was a coin that was found with Quirinius' name that showed indeed during that time frame he was the proconsul of Syria and Cilicia. This is another point of contention that people often bring up, that he didn't actually rule during that time. Okay? So, and this is, you'll see that a lot of times this is the type of argumentation that will come against the historical facts about Jesus Christ. It's often, well, we don't have clear evidence right now, and therefore it must be incorrect. So, in the book of Luke, chapter 3, it says, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, Herod, tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea and Trachonitis, and Lysanias, tetrarch of Abilene. Once again, people said, no, it can't be, because, you see, the tetrarch of Abilene was 55 years different from when Luke was saying he actually was the tetrarch then. And again, we don't use objectivity with the Bible, we get into trouble. Okay, now remember my question about the presidents. As it turns out, they did find evidence of Lysanias during this time. And people just say, okay, well, the guy obviously either 2 terms or more than one guy named Lysanias. Now, in today's world, that might be very rare. But for all I know, Lysanias was like John back then. Again, the problem becomes when people don't see evidence. There's nothing to the contrary necessarily. And so a lack of objectivity does what? You read into the evidence. Now, as Christians, we have to be sure we don't do the same thing. That can be a problem on the other side. And so we do have to avoid that. Now, the existence of Nazareth. Once again, I actually have the links here if anybody wants to get them. There is a CNN article that proved the existence of Nazareth. These are archaeologists. These are not, Christian zealots out there digging in the sand or anything like that. And actually, there's a YouTube video that goes over the article and talks about what they found in Nazareth in their dig to prove that Nazareth was a real place during the time of Jesus. Now, it's there now, but during the time of Jesus Christ, was it there? And for a long time, people said it was not. There was no evidence for it, and yet now, through archaeology, we know that it was. So once again, this point, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, is very important for us to internalize and for us to be able to share with other people. Okay? If you're going to share your faith, if you're going to try and talk to, especially on a college campus with professors or students who may be skeptical about some of these things, it's important to be able to help people understand, listen, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, it could be 5 years down the road and we're going to find that. So let's shelf that, whatever that might be, and examine all these types of areas where the Bible is legitimately true over and over and over and over again. J. Warner Wallace, he was an atheist. He was a cold case detective, and he decided to examine the Gospels from a purely atheistic standpoint. But he used the scientific methods that he used as a cold case detective to examine them. You see, well, I'm going to look at this for real. And this is a quote that he has. Growing up, and he wrote a couple of books, he became a Christian, long story short, and check this out. He said, growing up as a skeptic, I never thought of the biblical narrative as an eyewitness account. Instead, I saw it as something more akin to religious mythology. Now, here's the key. Philosophical naturalism prevented me from taking miracles seriously. So, because there were miracles in the Bible, and he was a naturalist, meaning no such thing as miracles, no such thing as God, that stopped him from being able to take the Bible seriously. That's called bias. And so he is honest about it, but there's bias all over the place. And we have to be careful, even when we're working with someone, to be able to identify, aha, see, this person may not want to believe, and let's help them through some of these things. That's what this presentation is for Christians. Any Christians here, this should help you to have evidence outside of the normal facets to be able to help people say, hey, you know what, if you don't believe in miracles or you don't believe in God, but let's get some of these facts down, and then you can have a more accurate discussion with them. So J. Warner Wallace later said, but when I read through the Gospels, it appeared clear, or when I read through the Gospels, that the writers of Scripture identified themselves as eyewitnesses and viewed their writings as testimony. Of course, the opening to the book of Luke says that, doesn't it? He said, I looked for eyewitnesses, I went and interviewed people, I want to have an accurate account, and I want you to be able to know with certainty what you believe. So, what was the answer that you guys had? How many terms? 2. Right? I mean, most people 2, right?
History, like he said.
Yeah. But, so if we were digging something up 1,000 years from now about presidents in the United States, and all we knew was they only served 2 terms. And then we found something that said, well, you know, Franklin Roosevelt served more than 2 terms. And then we found some documents that said George Bush, and what year? What year? That's impossible. That's so many years apart, there's no way. Impossible, right? George W. Bush. Impossible, right? Well, Franklin Roosevelt served how many terms? How many people know how many terms Roosevelt? Yeah, right? How many people know what happened not too long after Roosevelt? 23rd Amendment, right? 22nd Amendment. And they said, no more of that. We're not having people for longer than 2 terms. So he served, he was voted in 3 times. And then with George W. Bush, right? Well, George H.W. Bush was George W. Bush's son, right?
No, backwards.
What did I say?
Father, grammar version.
H.W. was his father.
H.W. was the father, yes.
H comes before W.
Yes, H comes before W, sorry. So, again, this is what happens with historical documents, though. You pull out something that says Lysanias on it, you pull something else out, oh, this is 10 years apart, impossible, see, this is inaccurate. Well, couldn't something happen like more than one person with that name, multiple terms? It's happened in our American history, which is only a fraction of Roman history. So, we have to be careful when we're looking backward and trying to come to the factual information that we're deriving from history, because history is coming at us in fragments, and we have to work with what we have, avoid that bias, avoid anachronism, and these types of things. So why don't people believe, if people see that, hey, you know what, there's a lot of archaeological information, there's a lot of things that do support truths in the Bible, even small things like, I mean, the Bible's not written about Lysanias, okay? He's just barely mentioned. So if it's accurate about things that are just mentioned in passing, why not give it the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, maybe it's actually trying to record accurate information?